Welcome to this video tutorial with virtualracingschool.com for the Blancpain GT3 series on iRacing. This week the series visits the historic Monza circuit, and this time we're also back in the Audi R8. The lap I've driven is on sprint race fuel with default late afternoon weather to match the official schedule. As usual, I'll play the lap through first in full before then going into the analysis. Okay, so that was a 1 minute 46.457. Okay, so we're on the VRS app. I've got data packs selected on the left here, and this time I'm going to choose the Audi data pack driven by myself. We're going to choose week 5, of course Monza. Loads the session details where you can download lap files, replay, and of course the setup. I'm just going to click on Learn Track, which is going to load the analyzer, and if any of you are unfamiliar with what you're seeing here, it's going to play a video of the lap through, but there are some telemetry channels overlaid. So we've got a steering angle trace across the duration of the lap, as well as a speed trace and brake and throttle traces, and finally some live inputs at the bottom here. So the lap is divided up into sectors automatically generated by VRS, and this is the run from the start finish line, sector 1 to the first corner. So obviously you want to just keep the car nice and straight, maximize your straight line speed, but thinking about your approach to the braking point for turn 1, you've got some braking markers which you'll pass by on your left here. There is a 150 marker here. We're going to brake just after there, so I'm just going to slow it down to half speed and play that through. Now obviously I'm going to brake nice and hard, probably it is the heaviest braking zone on the whole circuit, so you want to brake nice and hard and sustain that heavy brake pressure. I am bleeding off there gradually as the downforce comes down slightly, so the threshold at which the wheels are about to lock up reduces slightly with speed. Of course the car does have ABS, but it's always best technique to avoid overusing it and relying on it. You're going to see some blips on the downshift. Those are just the automatic car generated throttle blips to match the engine revs. So keep the car nice and straight. Quite a late turn into this first chicane. You want your speed to be quite low so you can take the ideal line, which is going to be to use a lot of this first curb. So just wait for that to load. Just go back ever so slightly again. So yeah, you can take a good amount of that first curb. The only real risk is being penalised for cutting the track too much. In between the two corners, you can get into the throttle briefly and try and bring the car nice and tight to the right on the exit, which will open up the left-hander, and you've got another very long period of full throttle high speed section, so your exit out of the first chicane is quite critical. And again, I am using lots of curb. There is a red sausage curb on the inside. You can use that, just be cautious with it. In first gear, of course, as well. And feed the power in, open the steering up. Just a small correction for oversteer there, as I'm trying to find traction and using all of the circuit on the exit, so opening the car up onto that curb. Just speed it up through Curva Grande down towards the second chicane. Obviously hug the curb on the right, but try not to make contact with it, and the same with the grass, just hug it all the way around. And then thinking for your braking point into the second chicane, which is going to be pretty much under the bridge, or just at the beginning of the bridge. So just going to slow that down again. So it's another very heavy braking zone. This sector is much shorter in terms of distance, so everything is stretched out longer. That's why it looks like I'm braking for much longer. In reality, I'm not. But yeah, you want to brake hard and sustain that brake pressure. Don't turn in yet. Keep the car out wide. When you sort of approach the curb, that's when you want to think about bleeding off the brakes and gradually turning in as well at the same time. And again, you can use a lot of this first curb. I could probably have used even more than that, and I'm very quiet with the pedals when I'm using the curbs. That's very important. So I've got my braking done, I've bled off. I did breathe into the throttle there, that's my own input. That's just to stabilize the car, reduce the load on those front tires, just to ensure that I'll make it through nice and smoothly. In between the two corners, you can get back into the throttle again briefly, but you'll notice that as I attack the second curb, which is quite aggressive, but you can get away with it in the Audi, again, very quiet with the pedals. So I've taken a big lift there, and I'm waiting for the car to land before I pick up the throttle hard on the exit, and of course use... there's a little bit of oversteer, which you can see in the steering trace as the car lands, and I'm at full throttle. But you should be able to collect that up if you're quick enough, and open the car on the exit using all of the exit curb again. Into the first of the two Lesmos now. There's no real reference for this. There was a 100 marker that we just passed, but it's going to be well after that when we're going to start braking into this corner. The important thing obviously is positioning. We want to be right at the edge of the circuit on entry to open the corner up as much as possible, and it's a very brief braking zone, so braking quite briefly there and bleeding off the brakes very early, but I'm kind of not rushing, so I start bleeding off early, but I don't rush the release. So I hold on to those brakes for quite a long time, and you'll see also that I'm playing with the throttle as well on the entry as well. So basically what I'm doing there is trail braking to rotate the car into the corner and maximize the grip, but then I'm stabilizing and unloading the front end just by playing with the throttle to sort of counter against too much of a positive turn in. The goal really is to try and hook up into the middle of the corner nicely. There's a little bit of camber at the apex, and you want to just hook up into that, and notice I'm at full throttle as well, pretty much at the apex, or just after I've apexed. So we'll just take it back a tiny bit. So yeah, pretty much as I apex, I pick up the throttle, and then I just wait a little bit, just sustain that throttle input for a little while, waiting for the car to settle. It's very brief, and then I commit to full throttle when I feel like the timing is there and the grip is there, that I'm going to make it through the exit of the corner without running out of track. Now there is a lot of track available on the exit, so you want to take advantage of it. which is going to help you get onto the throttle sooner. You got a lot of AstroTurf on the exit. The car isn't that loaded up by this point, so you can let the car run out wide and really take full advantage of that. Into the second Lesmo now. There is a 50 marker there, but you're going to brake significantly before that this time. Very similar approach to the first Lesmo. This one's a little bit faster, and the apex, the curve of the corner, is shorter. So faster but briefer. But in terms of braking trace, very, very similar. Brake hard initially, bleed off, and turn in quite early as well. And the goal in terms of positioning, once again, is to be right into that apex, hugging that curb on the inside, where you should be able to pick up the throttle really hard and quickly. And so slight bit of hesitation from here to here, not quite at full throttle straight away, but doesn't take very long before I feel like the car has the grip and is settled enough. And again, similar to the first Lesmo, there is a wide flat curb on the exit which you need to take advantage of if you want the best possible exit speed. So just going to speed it up now, hug the track to the left, and then open the car up, gradually bringing it over to the right hand side as you approach the Ascari high speed S's or chicane. I guess it's a chicane. Now there is a gantry which I'm pretty much underneath right now. That is roughly shortly after there is roughly where you're going to start to brake for this one. There's also an access road here on the right if you want a more precise reference. Just going to slow this down to half speed. So we're carrying quite a lot of speed again, so we can afford to brake nice and hard. But it is a high speed chicane, so down into third gear, and roughly halfway along the curb on the right hand side is going to be when you'll need to turn in, and simultaneously bleeding off the brakes as normal. So just to show you the car positioning for the first apex, you want to get as close as possible to these quite aggressive black and yellow sausage curbs on the inside of the first apex, and then try and exit fairly tight so you're not sort of running out of road here. That's quite important because that's going to set you up for the exit, so you want to have a little bit of track to spare to open your approach into the right hander, which is going to be flat out very briefly there for me, but I have a lift before I reach the curb. So I've just lifted and now I'm back on the curb, and again committing to full throttle just as I leave the curb. So approaching the final curb on the left, I do actually have a slight confidence lift as I'm running over this, because I'm conscious of this aggressive sausage curb on the inside, and that's not really significant enough of a lift to really reduce my speed that much. I mean, it's tiny really. Just on the exit, open the car up again. You've got this flat curb on the exit, so take advantage of that. The real important thing though is you need to have the car nice and unloaded, and so you're sort of not really cornering that aggressively if you're out here. That way you can get away with it. If you do drop some wheels onto the grass, that is pretty bad news. So this is, I would say, the absolute maximum limit in terms of how wide you can run the car on the exit through there. So just speed up again towards the final corner of the circuit, Parabolica. Very high speed corner where the exit is absolutely critical. So we're going to brake at around the 100 meter marker here, roughly halfway along the green painted area curbing on the left. Quite a heavy braking zone again, and just slow it down. And bleeding off quite early though, because you need to turn in actually quite early for this, and everything is progressive, so I'm progressively turning in more and more, progressively bleeding off the brakes more and more to sort of fully exploit the grip of the tyres as I transition from braking to cornering. And I'm trying to spot my apex here, which is going to be the curb on the inside. Now I do bleed off the brakes fully there, and also play with the throttle, just breathe on the throttle there briefly. So I guess the car was rotating really well, and I didn't need to trail brake to sort of load the front end. I almost needed to counteract that and unload the front end, just stabilize the car so that the car didn't over rotate. Otherwise I might have got really out of shape on the entry. So that's quite important. And picking up the throttle very, very early into here, the corner really opens up on the exit, so you can get on the throttle super early. The only thing is, because the car is so loaded up in the middle of the corner, we're in third gear, you are actually traction limited quite severely at this point, so I'm only able to get to 50 or 60% throttle, and then I have to modulate, exercise some patience, and then I'm quite eager to get to full throttle, so I commit now, and I deal with a little bit of oversteer on the exit. So I open the steering up. I pretty much open the steering up as I reach full throttle, so you see that that is exactly when I apply full throttle. I open the steering up, and that's because the rear end is just rotating at that moment. So I'm just holding it together with some steering corrections. Other drivers are smoother than this. This is just my particular style. I like to sort of seesaw at the wheel quite subtly, just to give me a better feel for if I'm more ready to correct for oversteer. As ever, you can find qualifying and race setups, telemetry and replays over at virtualracingschool.com, where you can also book one-on-one tuition with myself and top drivers from the likes of Koana Simsport. Good luck for this week, and feel free to post any questions or comments below. Thanks for watching.